How's everyone doing today? Now that I hope you guys have watched my first video, which was launch 1 to 5, which was from Haas to Visa Cash App RB. So from last week, and so this week it was from Aston Martin to Red Bull, and this video is going to focus on those cars that were launched this week. So as I doing this, it's Sunday, the 18th of February. Okay, the season is just about to start, and this coming week, starting tomorrow, Monday, this week, this coming up, it's going to be pre-season testing, and we are all excited to see what all the launched car can do. So without wasting any more time, now let's get into the 5 last launches. So as we do, just going to again just say what I'm going to do here. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to just do an analysis and compare the changes that we can see with our naked eyes. So I'm not going to do like a very technical video, so talking about what every component or what every new changes is going to work like or something like that. I'm just going to talk the changes that we can see with our eyes, and then I'm going to do, starting with Aston Martin, I'm just going to do in the order of launches as I did with the previous weekend. Of course, Aston Martin, then Aston Martin is going to be followed by Ferrari, then Ferrari is going to be followed by Mclaren or Mercedes. I don't know, because they launched on the same day, but I don't know who launched first. Was it McLaren? Was it Mercedes? So yeah, but I do think McLaren launched first, because I think that they launched during the day, and Mercedes sort of, or is it Mercedes? I think, I'm not really sure who launched it. And then lastly, it's going to be Red Bull. So okay, now starting here with Aston Martin. Okay, Aston Martin, as we can see, they're keeping their very green, or I don't know, what's the name of this color again? I'm sorry guys, I cannot really, is it green? Is it some type of green, or is it lime? I don't know. So, but looking at these two, the bottom ones, so I'm just to make it easy for you guys, every time the bottom one is from 2023, and then the newer one will be the top one. So I'll be zooming in each. If I have to talk about a specific part for concentration, then I'll be zooming in. Okay, let's start with looking at Aston Martin. The color, of course, same color, but I think this year's color, or maybe it could be the photos, it's a little bit so lightish or darkish, so compared to last year color, it's a bit even more shinier. So what can we see from this front side view? Not very much, but one thing I can see that the front wing definitely, and the rear wing has changes. So is the side port. The side port has also changed, definitely there. And then the inlet for the side port also has changed. So let's go to the next photo, and this photo is the rear of the cars. So this is last year's car, as we can see. So I think they used a push rod, and this year they are using again. So no, this year they're using a push rod. Last year they were using is a pull rod. So that's one thing that I can see about their suspension. So about their suspension, actually, so they changed to a push rod this year from a pull rod last year. So we can see some change in the suspension, and also the diffuser. The layout is totally different here, I guess. So just look at here and here, totally different layout or arrangement of the component there. So, and one thing we can see about the rear wing, if we look here, it's definitely a change. This year the design is like have over corners, not like boxy and sharp corner like last year. So, and then I think the engine cover, it's also a little bit different, or is the same, just that the vents, sort of a change with the vents, but not much changes either. So that's one thing that I can definitely see here. So going on to the front view photos. Now I'm trying to be very, very swift with this video. I don't want it to be as long as the first video. So I'm going to try to be very swift. Okay, now let's look at the front wing. So last year front wing, as I say, last year it's definitely a change. And then you can see, and this is one thing that I've noticed in all the car this year, that all the front wing have gotten a bit narrow on all the car that I've analyzed so far. So it's the same thing here. You see last year, from the first element of the front wing to the last element, there are 4 elements, and you can see that the width here, and it has these sort of sharp curve, which are not as sharp on this year's car. Plus the length from the first element here to here, it was a bit more wider last year, and this year it's more narrower. So, and that's I've seen that on all the car, and we can see they are using a push rod suspension. So and also last year they used a push rod suspension. So yeah, and now you can see that the suspension, they haven't really changed. The suspension is still almost the same layout, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so same layout, push rod. So I think this is the what lowest wishbone, and then these are just the upper wishbone there. Okay, the other thing that we can see, let's talk about the nose. This nose, definitely there's a very noticeable changes here. This year it's a bit more flatter compared to last year. Okay, last year was also flatter, but I think it's a bit more wider. Wider. Last year it was a bit more narrower. So, and then also looking at the attachment of the nose, of the where the nose all come, looking at the attachment to the front wing, it has changed to this year. This year the attachment start in the second element of the front wing, while last year it was all attached to it came all the way up to the front element of the front wing. So this is one of the changes that I clearly see by just looking at the car here. Now let's see about the inlet of the side port. One thing that I can see is that although not much of a big change, there is a change. Last year they were more, I think, more wider, like the opening, and shorter. This year they were narrower and longer. So there's a changes to the inlet of the side port. Here and here there's not much change to the inlet to the engine. Nothing, no change there. So as we know that this inlet is just to provide fresh and cold air to the radiators that are in there for cooling. So I can see that also the side port design is the curvature of that side port. They are still both downwash, but there's a definite change in the shape of how they are designed, the curvatures. It's same terminology but different design, you can see here. So there's a definite change here. So okay, so those are the thing. And also looking at the rear wing from here, we can see the change that I was talking, that this year it was more over corners, while last year it was more kind of sharp boxy corners. Okay, and looking from here, we can see that actually they changed, though we cannot see clearly, I can see that they changed. Last year they were using push rod on the rear. This year they are using a pull rod on the rear, if I'm not wrong, or can see clearly. So going on, okay, now this one will give us a good look of the suspension. Definitely a push rod. So then I'm the only one who's seen. Okay, I think this year they made them a little bit more like flatter compared to last year, I guess, for more aerodynamic. And then you see the inlet to the sidepod that I was talking is so visible from this angle. We can see how narrower they've gotten from last year, the inlet. So they are definitely there's it's a definite change there. We can see there. So, and then also the color, as we can see, as I was saying, the color, this also give us a good look at the color. You see the color here, it's a bit more lighter, while this one is a bit more darkish. So the green is sort of a different sort of green, but it could also be just be the images. So maybe process the images. It could be the same color. And then also look at the front wing. We can see here that the front wing, there's a definite change here. And then the nose attachment again. So we can see here that there's almost like a sharp curve on the front wing on the third, or is it fourth? The fourth element of the front wing. So clearly we can see that. Okay, one thing that I'm definitely not going to talk about is the floor, because I just cannot see. Plus, I don't think I qualify to talk about the floor because it's a very intricate thing. Rather, an engineer talk about that. So me, I'm just going to talk about what we can see with our eyes. And then again, just to confirm the narrower front wing, or the width of the front wing from last year. Last year it was more wider. This year it's narrower. It doesn't have this curvature. So yes, the front wing has changed. Like every other car so far that I've done, and this is the 6th team, they've changed the front wing. Okay. And one thing that I've noticed that most cars haven't really changed the suspension. They haven't really changed the suspension much, especially as we see here. Aston Martin is literally keeping the same, just still the same suspension layout. Not much changes at all. Not much change. The only thing that I can see, I think if I look in this wishbone, okay, it's not bent, but it's just that it's a bit, yeah, but it's the same thing. Okay, moving on. Then from the side here, what this side will give us is a good look at the front wing that I spoke of. I mean, not the front wing, but the side pod. See the shape of the side pod from last year. This year, we know that Aston Martin from last year, they already sort of also got influenced by Red Bull. Their side pod was sort of influenced by Red Bull. So it's totally different from, let's say, the first year of this new regulation, 2022. So last year, most team already, and this year again, it's still, I would say, it's still a Red Bull inspired side pod. And so as far as I'm going, it's only Alpine who don't have any Red Bull inspired side pod so far. It's the only team I've seen. So moving on, I think we have seen enough of what we can see with our eyes. As a look, as we can see here, the design here to the inlet. Just see how this thing goes all the way to the front. And then last year it was a bit shorter, so the inlet definitely of this, and the side pod shape has changed. The inlet, I've seen the redesign, and then so you can see sort of this is last year. I don't think it's not as aggressive as this year, the downwash here all the way to the rear. So there's like this curvature cut through the under. The side pod is much more aggressive this year compared to last year. If you can see here, this is last year. Okay, continuing. Now, the 7th team to launch was Ferrari, Scuderia Ferrari. Okay, Ferrari, I must say, I will give them probably the best livery for this year, although I wouldn't say it's revolutionary, but it's one of the best. And I like it because Ferrari sort of is the reason why I like a Ferrari. The same thing that I think I would say the same to William and maybe a little bit to Aston Martin. These are the only team that are not playing that carbon fiber expose that every other team this year is playing. So they're probably one of the team that we are really going to see. They are really going to stand out because you cannot beat the red, the iconic Ferrari red. So and this year, Livery definitely beats last year. No need for more question here. So it's just so clear. I mean, just look at this, the way it's like an arrow, the way they incorporated this red in the second element of the front wing and then matching it with the nose. And I think their nose still the same. There's no changes to the how the nose attachment is still attached to the second element of the front wing. The only thing that we can see is that as the nose from last year, between the difference between the last year nose and this is that this year nose is a bit more flat and wider. So last year it was more pointier and narrower, and it's more like round, while this year it's flatter with more bevel, or is bezel. Can't really get that word right. So and then we can see the nose here that it's a bit more flatter, wider compared to last year, pointy and narrower. Okay, and then looking at the front wing, we can also see changes that here, again, this is one thing I've seen. I think this year's, okay, that's, I cannot really say this about Ferrari, maybe from this angle, but, the front wing width is almost identical to last year's. There isn't really much changes, or I wouldn't say, but if I have an image from the front where we can see clearly, then I'll be able to tell. Now, the only thing that I will be able to tell very clearly here is a redesign of the side pod. There's actually a bit of a redesign. You see, last year there was this, like, it's like curved in. It's like a pod inside the side pod. This year it's more downward, straight down. If you can see, look here how it goes all the way to the back compared to last year. Last year they sort of had a pod in the side pod. And then the halo this year is red. Last year it was black. Definitely can't miss that. And other than that, that's all we can see from this side. And let's not forget about the rear wing. The rear wing also a little bit of change, I think. Last year it was just a slight change, if I'm not wrong, here. But still pretty much close to each other. But you can see the design here. This element here, definitely the way the shape is formed is totally different from last year. Look at last year, it's sort of have corners here, then sort of 45 angle, and this year it's just smooth like that. And these angles, I think, a bit more smoother than last year. Last year they were both more sharper, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, pretty much almost the same. And then the inlet the engine inlet still keep that triangular shape, and I think Haas also have this. So yeah, and then they are also keeping a push rod suspension. I think they didn't change anything, because I'm just gonna talk about the front suspension because it's what I can see clearly. The rear suspension, I can't see so much. I cannot tell if they're using a push or a pull rod. Okay. Continuing from the side, we can see the side pod clearly. There's a bit of a change. Last year it was more wider. This year it's narrow, and again it's like downwash cut out from under. The side pod is more pronounced and more aggressive compared to last year. So, and then inlet to the side pod also a change compared to last year here. So this year, this front lower element or lower, I don't know if I should call this mouth or whatever, the lower element is the one that come all the way to the front, while on the upper there's nothing. While this year it was, I think, equal top and bottom. See here, it's like a opening of a mouth. So that's one thing that we can see definitely just looking at this side. But the livery for this year, definitely. Last year it wasn't bad, but this year even better. So there is the livery for this year is so good. I like that they incorporated this sort of pattern here. So cool. Ferrari definitely is gonna be taking the top spot in the livery comparison. Okay, let's continue. Looking from the backside view here, not much really can see. It's the any change diffusers. Yeah, I think that there's a sort of a change in the diffuser layout, and there's cannot see the suspension clearly. I won't be able to talk about the rear suspension at all. I cannot see it. Also, the vents. The one thing that I must have noticed here, they've redesigned the vents. See where the vent is this year compared to where they are last year. Last year they sort of ran totally from the side port all the way through the engine cover. This year they are almost all just on the engine cover. So, and you can see that the engine cover this year is a bit more backier. Maybe back is not the right word, but more like last year it was just like steep. This year it's more like boxy and like sort of they extended it compared to last year, which was just very steep, narrow design. Okay, let's continue. Now let's look at the front. Okay, the front wing, the front design. The only thing that I can spot on the front suspension here, they are definitely using a push rod suspension, and then if you can see the upper wishbone and the lower wishbone, and then the only change that I see is how they've attached this element here. So how they have attached the wishbone and the push rod. You can see last year there was sort of too much space, and this year they sort of put everything in accordance, like in the same, I guess, to try to make sure that the airflow there is very efficient and not so much blocking, creating sort of a drag, I think. So yeah, and then I think this year's air that's going down here through the front wings, I think the opening is a bit more wider compared to last year. And then I notice that they've removed these directional, I don't know, how should I call, notches. I think these are for like outwash, just to direct the air sort of outward. I think so, for outwash of the flowing of the air. So they are totally off of this year's wing. They are not there. These notches here, they are totally not there. This is last year and this is this year. So, and then again, as I was saying, that I couldn't tell if the wing was more narrow or wider this year, but I can see the difference. Last year they had more of, again, sort of sharp curve, and this year it was like a smooth fourth front wing element here. So no curvature, not many curvature like here. Okay, and then here we can clearly also see the inlet of the side ports. So you can see that Last year they've since redesigned, and last year they sort of it came all the way front equally from the top and bottom. This year it's only the bottom thing that came all the way to the front, or this one the top part didn't. So, and the front wing again, not much changed really. So not, I mean the rear wing. Okay. Oh, I need to concentrate. Okay, moving on. So I think I've talked about anything that I can talk about again. Okay, let's think I can see the suspension here clearly. So I think it's the same suspension. So not much change really. Still, I think it's a pull rod suspension. So yeah, okay. Now this view give us a clear view of the rear wing. You can see the rear wing definitely has changed. And then also diffusers, as we can look here, there's a change in the diffusers. And then also we get to see clearly that what I was saying about the side port design, like last it sort of have a curve inside, this sort of curve compared to this. If I were to go in editing mode and talk about this, if I were to use, I'm just going to cancel this and get out of this. I don't want to go in. I wanted to use a marker so I can indicate to you, but I won't be able to zoom in nicely like I do here. So as we can see, the change in last year, this is last year side port design, and this is this year side port design. And also the engine cover, as I was saying, last year it was more steep. This year it's so boxy and like more wider compared to last year. This year, and the vents this year are totally all on the engine cover. Last year they sort of started, you see, you had one on the side port, and then starting from the side port through all the way transitioning into the engine cover. This year it's all just on the engine cover. Okay, moving on. So then Mercedes AMG Petrona Formula One team. Now, I must say, I was expecting it's either back to silver or something like that, because I know I wasn't expecting them to keep it black again, but they managed to pull off something that I don't think any of us expected. And I must say, I'm not disappointed about the livery for Mercedes this year at all. So I must say it's an improvement. Last year it was very good, but this year it's an improvement. It's the total improvement. Okay, and the livery is unique, and I would say it's good. It's so in some color, we would definitely be able to tell this car from other cars. So even though it has sort of a lot of black, we can still tell apart from other cars. The thing this year is that there's a lot of cars that have a lot of exposed carbon. So a lot of cars like Haas, Kicksauber, Alpine, all those have sort of too much exposed carbon. So Mercedes also a bit of exposed carbon, but also some color, a bit more color compared to last year. Okay, now going back to this image. So clearly, so far, the only car that have used the pull rod suspension is for the car that I've reviewed so far. Of course, starting from last video as I spoke, I think the only other manufacturer that are using that so far is using a pull rod suspension in front is these guys. So these are the only guys using a pull rod suspension in front. While all the cars so far, they are using a push rod. So as we can see here, this is a pull rod suspension there. So it's only but the last year they were using a push rod suspension. So this year they changed to a pull rod suspension in front. This at the so far it's only Visa, Cash App, RB that are using a pull rod suspension of all the team that I've reviewed so far. Mercedes again, they're keeping the same suspension layout, push rod suspension. The only thing that they did is they've done almost what Ferrari did. You see the attachment of the push rod and this upper wishbone. So they just cleaned it up. They are sort of attached almost in the same place. They cleaned up. I guess it's just, I think, for, see, last year there's this is a push rod, and then you have this wishbone, upper wishbone coming here. Then you have this more space. This is the last year. So don't forget I mentioned that the bottom are always the previous year. So you can also say the year here. And now as I see this space here, it's not here anymore. They sort of match them so that there won't be too much air flowing there. And I mean, being blocked, sort of creating a drag. Okay. And the very big change that we can see is definitely you cannot miss the front wing. Very unique and very different from any other, and totally a new design. And then one thing that we can also tell here is just the way the attachment of the noses. Last year it came all the way into the front element. See, the last year it came all the way into the front element of the front wing throughout to the fourth. This year it starts in the second element of the front wing. That is not attached to the front element, and then you have this opening at the bottom here. So now look at the front wing. That you might think somebody, I remember when I was young, I used to hammer steel. So it looked like something manually hammered with hammers. It's like when you're trying to, I remember when I tried to make, it's like arrows when I was young. They had the farm. So they used to do like, those pointy metal thing that you put on arrows. So different type of, you use when you hammer, when you are pounding steel with a hammer, sort of deform. This is what it resemble the wing of Mercedes. But I think all this thing is just sort of created with how the air will be flowing coming off this front wing. Maybe create some vortices, especially here as it come off, the air come off of that front wing. And then apart from the front wing and the suspension, we can see that, okay, last year they still had their no side port design. They sort of didn't have a real side port, but they still have like opening. So this year they've ditched the no side port design completely, and they have front wing. Because last year, I think the first 5 races they didn't have side port, and then at Monaco they introduced the side ports in Monaco. This year from the get-go, which can mean that Mercedes have really overhauled their design of their car this year and totally going sort of a radical change. We can see that even the shape of the inlet to the side port is totally unique, not like any other on the grid so far. And then the rear wing from this side, the top rear wing this year, it has changed from last year. Last year it was more boxy and more wider and big and bulky. This year it's a bit narrower and still boxy corner, but they are sort of slanted down, I don't know, so maybe 25 angle. So just compared to last year it was all straight all the way sort of to the edge. This year, if you look here from this, sort of slanted down. That's one of the things that we can see from the front, from the rear wing. Hope I didn't say front when I'm talking about the rear wing. Okay, the inlet to the engine hasn't changed much, still pretty much the same there. Now, since they have introduced side pod this year, let's go and see what they got from the. Now, this is the front side view. You can see the side pod there. So, totally not so Red Bullish design. I think they are a bit more unique, but could be a little bit inspired by Red Bull, but they are totally unique and different. And look at how aggressive the undercut here, the curve under the side pole. So just the underflow of the air here. So, and it's all downflow, downwash of the air flowing all the way to the rear of the car there, so I think they are trying to redirect the airflow like this to the, I don't know, it goes out to the diffusers then. So we can clearly see, and one thing that I forgot to talk about is the nose. This year the nose is more flatter. I think it's everybody is keeping things flatter this year, I think, because last year it was flatter but also a bit more round, not as flatter as this year. This year it's more flatter. Just look at that. So you can even clear that the logo last year it was not a full circle. Just looking at it straight, this year it's more pretty much a clear circle, not deformed by the shape of the front wing or the curvature of the front of the, not the front wing but the nose last year. So this year it's definitely a bit more flatter. So, and you can actually see a lot of how things are detached here. This year it's a bit more cleaner, I must say. Okay, then getting on, continuing, we can see there, and then last year they were used, I think, yep, if I'm not wrong, last year they were using a pull rod. This year they moved that to a push rod, I think. Yes, or is that a pull rod? I cannot really see so clearly. It looks like a, let's see which one is it. I cannot see so clear. So this year I think they're using a push rod, if I'm not wrong. So and I think there's a sort of a change in the rear suspension layout. And I remember last year, the rear was one of the complaints that especially Hamilton was talking about, that or George Russell, the driver, spoke of the car last year. It was having a weak rear end, which was snapping out, especially when they tried to push it into corner. So I think they have made some changes looking at this. Definitely some change. I think last year it was pull rod, this is push rod. So, okay. So, now moving on to the side view. Yeah, you can see now here we can clearly see the side pod now, clearly. So last year it was no side pod design. There's not even a comparison there. It's very day and night. So totally last year there was no side pod. This year a clear side pod, you can see it, and it's totally different from other so far, but it's keep that form that you may form, but just that theirs is sort of narrower and not wider like a lot, and you can see the underflow here. This downwash is also very steep, but we've seen that with a lot of other cars, so nothing there. And then also change the design of the engine cover. Yeah, last year, because I think they have to do this because last year there was no side pod. This year, look at that, still sort of have this shoulder thing that goes on, but last year it sort of started from the halo and then kept flowing all the way to the back. This year it seems look like the same, or this is if you're looking at it, you might say it's a continuation of the same concept last year, but changes because of course, or that side port that wasn't, which is there now and that wasn't the last year. Then also said I wasn't going to talk about the floor, but looking about here, the floor edge here, you can see that there are some clear changes there. Okay, now that's about Mercedes. So we really can't wait for pre-season testing to see how these machines are performing. Now, moving on to the next image. So still, we've already seen this. Nothing much to talk here. I think I've spoken about everything that I can see with my eyes. So yeah. Okay. Then the next, actually, it cannot be Red Bull. Now Red Bull must be like the last team. So that means that McLaren should be first. Okay, the problem with McLaren now, I don't have those comparison images because Formula One, I guess they didn't make them because I don't know why. Maybe it has to do something to do with how McLaren launched their car, that they didn't really post images like others, or is it because their images were posted with these backdrop that you can see like that? So looking from the side, from the livery of last year, if I were to compare, I have some image that I will show you guys now for comparison's sake. So one thing that we can see is that McLaren, they removed there's no more that sort of cyan blue or just blue. This is last year, there's no more that blue. So I don't know if this one, the launch, I'm also not very sure if this was the launch livery for last year. Okay, let's look at from this side. I think this the launch livery from last year. So what we can see here is that there's no blue this year. No blue. Compare this last year and this year, there's totally no blue. There's no blue this year. It's just their papaya, orange, and black. And then, which means that they also joined. Last year, they were also already on the bandwagon of exposed carbon. This year, even more, I think. Or I don't think that's paint, black paint is just exposed carbon, I think. So this year, it's even more, I think much more exposed carbon. So, but the livery is what we expect from, it's what we know McLarens. They are all a papaya orange, of course. There's no way they will ditch that. So I think McLaren also used to be silver back when they used to be McLaren Mercedes. So yeah. So as we can see clearly from the side pod, there's definitely a change. So moving on to the next image. Now this is the front image. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep this comparison images. So this is this year, and I'm going to pull up this one, or should I say this one? No, this is this. Sorry guys. Yeah, McLaren, because of that, they're giving me a hard time. Okay, looking here, we can clearly see that yeah, there's a definite change in the front wing design. Last year, this is last year. Last year it was all just, it was, I think, more wider, and the has sort of a just a very steep one curve here. This year, look here, start off like flat and then sloping down. And you can see here the attachment of the nose, the same terminology this year. If you look here, um, looking here, this year, it's still attached from the second element of the front wing. So just, so there's no change there. So, and the nose almost keep the same shape, but you can just see some changes like here, like last year. Hope you guys can see this movement of this end. Last year, here they didn't have this notch. This year they definitely have a notch. So that's one thing that I can clearly see there. And then the other thing that we can see is definitely the redesign of the redesign of the front wing. It's obvious it's redesigned. And then the other thing that we can see is this. They are using a pull rod suspension. So, okay, that means that now they become the second team using a pull rod suspension then. So, yep. So clearly they are now the second team to, I was trying to make sure that I don't misspell out the information here. And then what we can see from the inlet and the side pod, of course, they are more redesigned this year. They are more wider. And then I think, look at this, so steep, or it's just the black because I cannot see. I think they are, so the shape is more steeper than last year. Last year they were sort of sloping down straight like a waterfall. This year it's like curving in, it's more aggressive shape of the side pod. And then inlet, as you can see, this year the inlet are totally different. Last year they were more narrower and wider. This year they are wider, like vertically. Last year they were wider horizontally. This year they are wider vertically, and I think they're sort of bit more opening. And then look at this. If you can see how the wishbone is attached. So they almost attaching, almost keeping it same, but with the upper wishbone. And then look at the lower wishbone here. So you can just see the tie. Okay, this is last year. You can see they've tidied, cleaned up things. Oh, I think I'm getting tired and that the English is slipping away. They have cleaned up things. Look here, there isn't much like last year. This is last year, and we can clearly see just all this, the pull rod. So, and then they're using the pull rod suspension there. Okay, looking at the rear wing, it's also a bit different. The rear wing. This last year it was more, it's over, but moreover this year it sort of keep like a restrained corner shape, not as steep as this. The inlet, the engine is still the same, nothing has changed there. Okay, let's move on. Okay, because I don't have enough image of McLaren, I'm not really going to be talking about this. And I think they are using a push rod in the rear. So, okay, so this was last year. So I'm just going to really skip this. I don't want to. talk too much about because I don't have very good images. Okay, so now we are going to move on to Red Bull, and they were the last team to launch. So as we can clearly see here from the front, the first image, last year's car. So the thing that I can see straight away is the side pod totally different this year. This year, the side pod is totally different. Side pod and what's more different is the side pod inlet, just different. It's almost have that almost shape that's sloping down like Mercedes, but other than Mercedes, its top part come all the way to the front. So that's one thing that I can notice. And also, yeah, the rear wings pretty much look the same, not much change. And you can see here this, say the side port and then the shape to the engine cover is totally different. Look at here and look at here. There's a change there. And then the front wing. Okay, the front wing, I think Red Bull front wing is almost like Ferrari, keep the same shape. Not much has changed and it look pretty much the same, the front wing. The only thing that where the very obvious difference is you look at how the nose is. The nose is much flatter this year. And one thing again, almost all noses are flatter this year. I guess after the data collected by teams, the flatter is much more, I guess, it's more better in utilizing the air as it hits it. And then the other thing that we can see is the attachment of the front of the nose or into the front wing. Last year, it was attached from the second element of the front wing. This year, it comes all the way to the first element of the front wing. So all the way here. So that's a different. Last year, it was only from the second element. So it didn't touch the first element and there was like sort of a space for air below here. This year, it's totally attached throughout all elements of the front wing. The front wing, I don't see much change. The only thing that I changed is just these notches that are touching the wing here. It's pretty much the same. The very different is only that this year they are not all the way close in the corner of the side plate or end plate to the front wing. They are a bit more in. See where they are compared to where last year is. And let's not forget, this is the team that everybody is trying to beat. So Red Bull are the team that every team is going to try to beat. So it's something exciting to look forward to. And then again, they are using pull rod suspension, clearly. So that means that maybe this is where Visa K-Shape also got the inspiration, because they also changed their front suspension from a push rod last year to a pull rod this year. Red Bull is also using a pull rod. Red Bull like pull rod. Okay, moving to the side. So the front side view. Then here we can clearly see the side pod difference that I was talking about. Look at that. Last year, the bottom lip of the opening of the side pod was came all the way to the front. This year, it's the top part. It's the top part, and you might think there's no side pod. I think there's like an opening, just that it's dark that I cannot see. But so I think maybe sort of like I mean, this is a side pod, right? Just the only problem, confusing thing is that there's no opening for me to see it clearly. Like last year, there's a clear opening. That's a very radical design, I must say. And then look at this. Look at the engine, the shape of the engine cover all the way to the back. It's totally different. Look pretty much almost like Mercedes from last year. And Mercedes, I think, had sort of a, yeah, if I'm not wrong. Okay, but either way, just that I don't have a, yeah, let me see if I can use this. Look at this. Mercedes sort of have this, just that with Red Bull, they've done it differently. It went all the way sort of up and then steep, while Mercedes one, if you look here, come on. If you look here, it was all the way straight, all the way up. So I must say Red Bull are brave. They just didn't stay, maybe just because you think since their car was already the fastest car on the grid last day, they wouldn't really do much changes. But looking at this guy, you can clearly say that they didn't just let it rest. They were really making changes. So looking at this, so I guess they are always sort of improving things, I guess, and just challenging new ideas and way to do things. So the looking at last year side pod, you see it has this slant. This year it was sort of a bit more boxy, but just straight away. Okay, and then this is the side pod that inspired most team from starting last year. So I think it was only Ferrari and Mercedes that didn't copy Red Bull side pod in 2023. Most team already from last year, they started copying Red Bull. Okay, now what can we see again? We can clearly see that the inlet to the engine has changed. Now it's more sort of a boxy. Last year it was more round. So it's very obvious. That's one thing that I cannot miss there. Just change something quick. So change for an hour so I can finish talking this. Yeah, that's one thing that we can see. The very big difference is definitely the front wing there, the layout, and it's more flatter this year compared to this of last year, which was have more bezel, and then bevel. And then looking at some changes here, I think they are a bit more aggressive this year, but still look the same here. So nothing much. Okay. Then let's see the side pod. Now this will give us the clear view of the side pod. And so, and the side pod inlet. The side pod shape almost the same, especially looking at it from the top, but it's the opening or the inlet in the side pod that's very changed. So last year it was very big holes. This year it's sort of small hole that just, I think it's vertical holes even. It's not like last year horizontal wide openings. So this is just like sort of tiny. So yeah, there is some changes really that Red Bull have gone about changing things. Yeah, this is the same image, nothing much new here. Yeah. Okay, then lastly, that what I want to do is just talk about their livery. Okay, their livery, this is a very Red Bull livery. I mean, and then I didn't expect them to do any sort of change, radical livery, like let me say kick Sauber or anything. I think Red Bull sometimes they do white, but I don't think they will use it as a whole season color. Were more likely, I knew they were more likely just to keep the same thing. So when it comes to livery, Red Bull doesn't do much changes. I mean, from 2022, 2023, 23, I mean, you can literally mistake this car for each other when it comes to the livery. So, but is it bad or is it good? I mean, for Red Bull, as we know Red Bull, this is the sort of their trademark. You won't miss this car. They will stand out because they have a unique and well-known livery, and you cannot miss this bull thing that's always there. So yeah, it's work for Red Bull. But I wouldn't say it's a revolutionary livery, and definitely I'm not gonna put it in any top 5 if I'm going to 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 rank the livery, which I'm going to do. I'm going to do a ranking of the livery, but Red Bull definitely won't be in the top 5 because there's just not much changes when it comes to the livery. But it is Red Bull, and we like them like that. They are perfect. Their livery is perfect for them, and it suits them. It suits them perfectly well. So thank you very much. That's it. I hope you enjoyed watching this and you were able to watch until this very end. And I know I got sort of mixed up probably some few things there, and my English might be not to your liking, but you can tolerate it. So that's it for today. So see you in the next video. And if you think this was a content that's you like, or you think my content are worthy your subscription, please, it wouldn't hurt, and I'll appreciate it if you can hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.